All right, welcome everyone to the ninth episode of Game Dev Insiders. I'm Justin, and I'm here with Santiago. We've been off for, I think, 3 months almost. The July 20th or 24th, I think, was the last one. And well, how have you been since then, Santiago? What have you been up to?
I've been up to being very, very busy with personal stuff and with work. So hopefully everything will go all right and we'll be able to pick up more of these live streams from now on.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking. Since then, uh, I've been mostly focused on behavior designer, and I guess that being away from Game Dev Insiders, while I haven't enjoyed that part as much, it's been very good for productivity, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm able to get it out now or get the pre-release out now. So yeah, if you haven't heard, the pre-release of Behavior Designer is out. It's available at what I think optiv.com/assets slash behavior designer pro. I'll put a link to it in this description, but the pre-release is out. And in this video, we plan on going through kind of all the major features and kind of the major changes of it. And there's a lot. So I, I guess to kind of give you a little bit of backstory on what the goal of Behavior Designer Pro is and how we came here. Behavior Designer 1 was released in February of 2014. So it's almost been a 10 and a half year old asset. We've done a whole bunch of updates, but we have never done a major version, never a major upgrade. And this is going to be it. We I started Behavior Designer Pro, well, what is now known as Behavior Designer Pro, in 2019, with the goal of adding ECS support to Behavior Designer. And back then, I think it was ECS was at version 0.43, 0.42, some old version. And I was sort of just kind of waiting to see how ECS progressed and when it would be production ready. Well, it ended up taking a few years for it to be production ready, and then I really started hitting the ground running with this DOTS version of Behavior Designer when version 1.0 of DOTS was released. And since then, it's been a lot of work to kind of get the feature set at an equivalent level of where the original version of Behavior Designer is at. I'm not quite there yet. So if you're kind of looking for a production ready to go kind of asset, I would recommend holding off a little bit. But if you want to kind of get your hands on creating a behavior tree that can be run by hundreds of thousands of AI agents, then Behavior Designer is ready to go in that regard. I do only recommend you to get this asset right now in its current state if you are already completely familiar with Behavior Designer. There are the kind of the overall implementation of the behavior trees. While it's all completely different using dots, it's kind of the same underlying learnings, I guess you could say, where if you understand behavior trees and how they work, the logic on how they work, you'll have no problem with this pro version. But it does not have any integration tasks. I don't have any of the add-ons ready to go. There's no samples yet. There's no documentation. There's no video. I don't know what else I'm missing, but you'll get what you need, but you won't get anything extra with it right now. So that's kind of where we're at right now with Behavior Designer. But there are some features of this pro version that will make actually some of the integrations unnecessary. And in part of this video, I'll go through why that is the case. So yeah, I think Santiago, do you have any intro
Yeah,
questions
before
for Behavior Designer before I really get into what it's all about?
yeah, before we even get started, you mentioned that since it doesn't have documentation, etc., when do you think this will be planned for?
Right, right. So I don't know, honestly. I'm working on this as my main task right now, and we'll see how long it takes. Honestly, it really would not surprise me in if I did not get this Pro version out on the Asset Store until early 2025. Just for part of the reason that I don't necessarily want to, like, if I get done in a month and a half or 2 months, I guess 2 months from now, I'm not necessarily going to want to release it right during Christmas and during all that type of stuff. Just because it would be kind of nice to have a little bit of a break and then get back into Behavior Designer. But it's also, I want to ensure that it's a very high quality release. I mentioned all those things that it doesn't have. There's also some very minor features that I still want to implement, and I have kind of a list of those. But those I could see implementing for the next couple of weeks before I then get started on the true documentation and all that type of stuff. But if you get this version right now, I will be doing regular updates to Behavior Designer Pro on the OPSIP store. So you will kind of be able to get a better version with each update. So good question, but no answer.
That's very nice. No, but it's good to know at least an ETA on when we can hope to get our hands on the definitive version of version 1.0. I'm guessing right now it's more like a not very much a bit of a pre-release of what people can expect. Because if most of the features are already there, but just people will need to do some extra work of actually understanding how things work. Of course, the forum is open. People can ask questions, and we'll be able to answer all of those. So I think with that we can get started in the details.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah. So to get started, I guess when you first import Behavior Designer, the very first thing that you're going to notice that's different is we are now in the packages folder, which we have 3 different packages being installed: Behavior Designer, Graph Designer, and Shared. This shared directory is the same thing that you've seen with the Ultimate Character Controller and the inventory system. Graph Designer is kind of an abstracted layer on top of, well, I guess it is underneath Behavior Designer. It's a very generic graph implementation, which is actually going to allow us to do some cool things in the future. Santiago and I have been talking about some other graphing asset, and we're not going to say anything quite yet, but we have the infrastructure in place. I had originally started using Unity's, experimental graph view API layer, and that had some issues, and then they ended up not releasing it at all. And then they have something called like Graph Tools Foundation or Graph Foundation Tools. I don't know what the acronym is for it, but that one they are supposedly still using, but it's not in release state at all yet. So I decided just to kind of create my own graphing layer, and which ended up being a very good decision because I can basically control it and however I want, and how it makes sense for our specific projects. So this is going to be the graphing layer for Behavior Designer, but it's also going to be a graphing layer for future graphing assets. And Santiago in particular is itching to work on one, but we're not going to say anything quite yet. I do want to say though that any graphing asset that comes out from us in the future is all going to be dots based. So we are fully embracing that technology, and there are some amazing performance benefits of using dots. And then the last thing that you'll import is the actual Behavior Designer package, and this does 2 things. It first implements the graphing layer, and then it also implements this ECS-based behavior tree implementation. So to get started, I mean, it's pretty much what you would expect. My goal for the UI was to just make it better. I'm watching the comments, and yes, yeah, oh yeah, I forgot to mention. Feel free to ask anything over the stream. I'll answer it as I see it. Thank you first for all of your support. Behavior Designer in particular has been our most popular asset, and I'm extremely looking forward to getting it out. And to answer your question, yes, there will definitely be an upgrade discount. Still trying to figure out what that upgrade discount is. On the OPSIP store right now, it's listed for $145. So we did jump price from the current $90 to $145, which honestly I should have updated the $90 anyway to be a little bit more with this original version of Behavior Designer, but I figured we were so close to this new version that I wasn't going to mess with the price anymore. But yes, there will definitely be an upgrade discount, and I think it should be very favorable. I mean, right now we're sort of, I guess, yeah, but let's get your feedback. So right now the behavior designer price is 90. The release price is 140. 145. The upgrade price we were been kind of throwing around was 65, 70. Thinking that, okay, there's a price difference, 145 minus 90 is 55, and then just a little bit more for kind of the actual upgrade price. So you could almost say that the upgrade is $10 or $15 minus the or plus whatever the difference is. So I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that. I know there will be an upgrade, and we'll see what it is. Nothing's final, but that is what we are currently thinking, and we'll kind of go from there. Okay, well, great. I'm glad. All right, so behavior designer. Back to behavior designer. So this editor is all in UI elements. It's using the visual element system. So I can go to the debugger. Let me drag that debugger in. And we can, let's see, we can kind of select it, and now we can see that, okay, everything is a visual element. The advantage of this is for those of you who have extremely large trees, the version 1 of Behavior Designer was using IMGUI, and that would basically redraw every single frame. Whereas with UI elements, everything is in retained mode. So basically you just pop it to the screen and that's it. And then there's no updates needed unless you specifically call a refresh. So if we have like a 1,000 nodes or something like that, then this editor will be able to handle it. So yeah, the big visual element is UI elements. You can also do some things that have been really requested for a long time that I never got around to, such as dragging this bar. I know this is going to be the #1 feature. But yeah, so the focus of Behavior Designer was, I mean, UI elements and dots are the two huge major features, but I was kind of just giving it a refresh around the entire system and making sure I would implement it correctly. Looking else at this, let me go ahead and get a task up. So let's see. We'll add a task. This new filter bar, you would probably recognize it. I think it's definitely in inventory. I don't think, no, it's not in the character controller. So this, if you're familiar with the Ultimate Inventory system, you've used this same dialog before, but it's a much improved system compared to the current quick add system that we have. Let me go ahead and we'll be boring. I'll just add log. And when you add this, one of the first things that you notice is now instead of just adding a generic action or a generic log and it's just the log task, we now have this stacked action. And this will allow you to add any number of fields to the task as you go. And it basically makes everything a lot more compact. In the original version of Behavior Designer, we also have this stacked action and stacked conditional, but it's not a default task that gets added when you add a new node. So actually, if you're not making use of it, go ahead and make use of it because it does kind of tidy up your tree. Let's see. So we have, if we continue looking at this is just some little debug info, which is enabled with an editor pref. If you're really curious, I can tell you what the editor pref is to enable it. But this is everything related to kind of these tasks are based on an index system, and that is to allow dots to have the most efficient access to these nodes and to these tasks. And so there are 3 different values that I store. I store the index of the node, the parent index of the node, and the sibling index. And the maximum number of tasks that you can have is the ushort value, which is 65,536. So if somebody wants to have more than 65,535 nodes, Behavior Designer would not support it. But I would really need to be convinced that you need more than that number of nodes. It was mostly just for performance reasons that I limited it to a ushort rather than like a uint. But it can definitely be changed. But yeah, so that's why this 65,535 number is there. Let's see. From there, we have this new watch icon. This watch, well, actually the watch is not new, but what is new is this part. With this, you can edit the value right within in the task. Let's see, hello world. So that is really nice, and that it allows you to kind of actually makes it more than just watching the variable. You can also change the variable. So yeah, so that part is nice. Then shared variables are very similar to version 1. We don't have any variables, but that's a good indication that let's create a new variable. Actually, we're going to create a string so that I can log that string value. And let's see, we're going to add a string. And now we're going to add it here. And okay, it looks like I already found one where this value did not update with that. So this actually relates to the retained mode, and there's a little bit more work that you need to do with retained mode in order to get everything synced. So I'm kind of glad I ran into that now. It will be fixed with the next update. So I think I bet if I go back to it, yeah, if I go back to it, then it refreshes and the value is correct. All right, so with shared variables in version 1, the original version, we had graph and they were called global variables. Now we have graph, game object, scene, and project. And what that allows you to do is kind of specify the scope of your shared variables. The graph is just local to your graph. Game object, it will add a new component to your game object that is then local to your game object. So for example, if you have 2 behavior trees on your single game object, you can share those variables between them without having to like add it to a global variable. Then there are scene level global or scene level variables, and you can see I already have one. So that's under this component, this scene shared variables, and there's that one shared variable. And then if I go back to it, and then we have the project level shared variables, and that's very similar to the current global variables.
I have a question about the scene variables.
Yeah.
What happens if you have multiple scenes? Yeah. Is it just there's one game object that is considered a scene shared variables?
Yes, that is correct.
So if
so
it's one that we could unload and load, etc. Right.
Right. You could. I actually haven't. This stream is good for getting new use cases. I have not tested the case of having multiple scenes, stacked scenes, and then having multiple kind of doing this load unload. But I'll make sure that has been tested. So yeah, the scene shared variables definitely opens up a lot of possibilities. But then there are these use cases as well that okay now we figure it out and figure out how the right workflow with it. With shared variables, one of the things that I've gotten comments on is kind of the UI of shared variables, and I've kind of improved it a little bit by using the standard kind of reorderable list and that side of thing, or that side. So no more kind of weird arrow buttons that you have to click. And yeah, so the entire focus has been kind of just everything's been written from scratch, so might as well improve everything. Let's see, you can kind of property mapping is still there. Oh, you can't do it for a global variable, so that makes sense, but I can enable property mapping here, and then you can also remove with property mapping or property binding. You can also bind the property to a scriptable object instead of it being a game object, like in the original version of Behavior Designer. So that I actually saw that one use case on the forum sometime, and I was like, okay, it won't be that hard to add to this version in order to add it. So property bindings can be added to scriptable objects or game objects. And then kind of a little UI feature is, yeah, you can completely reorder how this looks. And oh, looks like I have my buttons mixed up. But yeah, you can kind of change the order or change the location of these. Well, number one improvement would be an aid at the out-of-box utility would be a wider variety of included examples, and I agree. We will be working on improve. I have probably 5 10 examples that I want to do. Some of them are kind of basic, what you're used to seeing right now. Others are I want to show off having hundreds of thousands of units on the screen, only using entities. Right now, actually, let me go ahead and let me delete this, and I'm going to add the wait task. And you'll notice that, actually, I'll get one back here. So if you look at these two different tasks, you'll notice that one has a green border, whereas one does not have a green border. And the ones that have a green border are the ones that are using dots as its backend. Dots has a number of speed advantage or performance advantages, but it also has some disadvantages. In, for example, you cannot use shared variables within a dots task because shared variables are classes, and classes cannot be, are not a data-oriented design. So they would not work very well, or they would not work at all with dots. So yeah, you have disadvantages with being a dots only task, but you have a huge advantage in that if you want to run hundreds of thousands of these, then great, you can. But yeah, there are limitations. Actually, let me go ahead and kind of show you. Oh, this one's kind of a fun one. You can now set the color to any color that you want. There's a little reflection going on because Unity does not expose this color picker by default, which was annoying. But yeah, so now there are, instead of just having 4 or 5 preset colors, you can change it to whatever. Let's see. I was going to show the code. Let me go ahead and edit the script and bring it over here. So this is the script for the wait task. This is using dots, and so there is a lot more code than what you would see with a normal behavior designer task. Just for comparison, I'm going to look up the log task. So here's the log task. This is what you would expect. This is very similar to what it looks like in version 1. One more difference is that instead of having, I think it was called shared string, or yeah, I think we call it shared string in version 1. The shared variable system now can use generics. So you no longer have to specifically create a new shared variable type for each type of objects that you want to share. You can just kind of create this new shared variable. But yeah, so this log task is very similar to the log task from version 1. And now if I go to the wait task, we'll see, okay, there's what, almost 200 lines with comments for the wait task. And the reason is because of the dot system. So dots definitely makes things a little bit more verbose, but I tried to kind of organize it and structure it as best as I could to make it as easy as possible. You don't necessarily have to care about the or you don't have to care about the implementation, the behavior tree implementation, but you need to be able to specify like what the next task is and all that type of stuff. I'll just kind of go through this structure real quick. This struct, so public struct, is considered a logic node, which is a standard node in Behavior Designer. This iTask component data specifies that it is a dots task. iAction is the type of task it is. iClonable makes it very fast to create a new of this task. And iSavable task is a new feature in Behavior Designer Pro that allows you to save and load the behavior tree, which I know is also a pretty big feature. So this representation right here, this struct, is completely for Behavior Designer and setting it up and setting Behavior Designer up with the dots system. So 130 lines. I mean, yeah, there's save, load, there's clone. Those you wouldn't necessarily need. But out of these 130 lines, this just sets up the structure for your dots task. None of this code is run in the dots ecosystem at all. What gets run is this component, which is, for those of you who are familiar with dots, is just a buffer element. And then there are a couple, I think, oh no, there's one tag that is needed to specify that this specific task is running. And then this system is what does the actual execution. So this system is going to be unique for each task. And this is where the actual logic is for my wait task. And you can see when the task is just starting, it has a status of queued, and now it needs to start running. set the start time, have to update the buffer. And now if the task is running, this is where I check to see if the task has elapsed based off of its wait time duration or not. If it has, we'll return a status of success. And then we have to update the branch to indicate what the next task is that should run. So there is definitely more to it if you're using a task, but this is where the speed is gained. And I tried so hard to kind of reduce the amount of code that you needed for each task. And there were certain points that this was a lot longer. So it's definitely some work to do a task, a dots task, but you'll gain it in the performance improvements. Let's see. Actually, kind of just thinking about that, you can disable tasks like you would expect. And with a disabled task, you don't have to think about it at all on the within the actual task. So that part is nice, and that's kind of some code that gets run before. All right. Let's see. Oh, this is another big feature. So right now, this start node is what used to be the entry node. It is now called start. And the reason for that is because you can now have multiple of these types of entry tasks, and they're called branch events. And this will allow you, for example, let's say that I have gotten this question so many times on the forums, but let's say that you are running a specific or a conditional abort triggers, and then you want to kind of run some cleanup logic based off of that conditional abort. Well, in the past, you would have to kind of use a different branch, or the branch that it switched to, you would have to do that cleanup logic within that branch. Well, now there's this new interrupt branch that you can kind of specify. And let's say, oh, after a conditional abort occurs, I want to log a value. And so then this will allow you to do the specific cleanup. You can also specify the specific task that it should it should listen for based off of that interrupt. So if you only want this one interrupt to run when this one specific task is interrupted or causes the interrupt, then you can do that. And let's see, I think you can add multiple ones. Yeah, you can add multiple interrupts. And so yeah, that is, I think, a huge new feature that there will be a lot of people wanting to make use of. I've also, let's see, what branch events have I added? So some physics related ones, an event system related one, and then some more physics ones in start. So actually, yeah, no, okay. Well, I'm glad. You can't add multiple start tasks, so I need to fix that error too. But yeah, so that those are kind of those features. Let me see what. Let's see. Dots backend, no views. Task add, conditional. Okay, so subtrees. Subtrees are the former their former external behavior trees. They are now kind of given more of a straightforward name, and they're called subtrees. I know I was really thinking outside of the box with that one, but let's see. Let me go ahead and actually show you one of the unit tests that I have for the subtree, just so you can kind of get an idea. Let's see, subtree. We'll do this one. So this is just a basic subtree, and this task itself, let's move this down. So this task itself is just kind of a return success subtree, and I think that's the only subtree, or that's all that subtree does. But let me go ahead and choose a more complicated example. Let's go to this one. And so right here, we have a little bit more, kind of more to it. There's an override variable system within I noticed my spelling mistake. Okay. Within version 1 of Behavior Designer, you can override variables. So for example, if your current branch has an integer value of 5, but then you want to pass and then your sub branch or your external tree has the same variable name of the same type, and it has a value of 7. Well, let's say that within your external tree, you want to get that 5 value. And in order to do that, you use this override variable system. And what that will do is it will take your original 5 value from your first behavior tree, or the kind of the parent behavior tree, and copy it to the subtree, or the external tree. And so instead of that 7 value, you now have a 5 value. The interface for this was not very intuitive, because you had to write both, you had to make sure the name was correct, the exact same name in the subtree, and then also the type. And it was very easy to kind of get confused or not spell it, or spell it exactly correctly, or not necessarily know what variables your external tree had. And so this UI has been extremely expanded upon. So now this override will search for everything within this subtree, or you could override it with another kind of a scene or a project level variable. But then it will then pass this value to the subtree. And so this subtree, if I go to it, we'll see. Let's see that error. Yeah, this error is nothing related to Behavior Designer. But yeah, so here's this subtree, and so it has a value of 6. Well, just to show that this is actually working, let me go back to this one tree. It's number 22, and so we have a value of 5. So I'll go ahead and hit play, and in theory, we should see a value of 5. And let's see, question is, will this require another purchase? And the answer is yes. We talked about it a little bit at the start. So go back to the start after this video is over, but the current price of Behavior Designer is Behavior Designer Pro is 145. The price of Behavior Designer Original is 90. So we were thinking of doing the difference plus a little bit more. Okay, it looks like I'm getting an error. So toolbar view, compare. Okay, I have some work to do. Let's see, it should still play. Yeah, okay, so it still plays, and it did output a value of 5. So we're the subtree portion is working. It looks like some editor code is not working so well.
I have a
But
question about
yes,
about this this variable going in and out of the subtask.
yes,
So let's say that you
yes,
have some stuff that are related to dots, and you mentioned that dots doesn't have shared variables. Can we
right.
still pass in values from a top task to a subtask through those things? Because it essentially, the sequence is it goes through the graph and then it reaches that part, does all the logic, and then it
So
restarts the graph,
the
right?
right, so the variable will pass to the subtree, but because the dots task does not have any shared variable system at all, the dots task isn't going to know about this passed in variable.
Okay,
So yes, it does get passed down, but you can't use
you
it in
can't
some
use it.
sense.
Okay, okay. Is there how?
Right.
So let's say that you had a graph with dots. Um, how are you able to change anything related to, let's say, for example, you have a lot of NPCs and they need to go from one position, and then we say, oh, now you have to go to this new position. It's like a very abstract use case.
Right. 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 So in dots, in that case, the dots tasks are going to be very kind of a lot more specific than the current Behavior Designer task. In that situation, what you'd have is a dots component that specifies the position that this dots system should move to, and your dots system would be the behavior tree task using your dots component that has the position stored. So you can then share that same dots component across multiple systems. And so that's kind of just the standard way of sharing data within dots.
Okay.
So it's possible, but for example, you would not be able to go from let's say we have a random position task that is written in kind of the mono environment. And using a shared variable, you could update the position and then pass it to another task. Well, you can't do that with dots unless you're using the entire dot system. So in some sense, there's an abstraction layer within Behavior Designer to allow dots tasks and and non-dots tasks to coexist, but that's kind of how deep it is. You cannot then share data between the two. You can share just the fact that based off of execution status, you can sort of share some of that. But actually, this is a good example. I'm seeing some more questions first. So query Behavior Designer Pro, similar to the original version of Behavior Designer. After all the initialization, there are no runtime allocations on the heap, and so that part is very similar to version 1. And so you're going to have much better version with this, or much better performance with this version 2, or the dots version of Behavior Designer compared to the version 1. So performance will not be any sort of issue with the behavior tree implementation. Of course, I could create a new task right now that is just completely takes the machine, but it's my own task that I just created. So that part doesn't really change. And in terms of, does this require any special considerations for ECS or multiplayer? And no, this actually, since you can save and load the behavior tree, it makes like host migration a lot easier for multiplayer. But you don't necessarily even need to know that Behavior Designer is using ECS, as long as you are using this minimum version of Unity, which right now is 2022.3.11, and then the version of dots that it's using, which I don't know what version I'm using right now, but yeah, whatever the dots version is. I think I'm using the latest, or I'm using one of the latest. I've been trying to kind of keep up a little bit with these packages, but yeah, using the dots version. One of the things that I do not have created right now is an installer, just to kind of do this check, just to make sure you are using the right versions of Unity and all that. So if you purchase the pre-release right now, just make sure you are running 2022.3.11 or later, plus the latest version of dots, and you'll be fine. There's no other requirements in that regard, and you don't even need to know that you're using dots. So what I was going to say is that, kind of related to sharing data, is that there is the priority selector and then the utility selector. Both of these tasks need to share some type of data because they are using they're getting the value of a child task. You'll notice here that this utility selector is very similar to the utility selector in the original version of Behavior Designer. What's different is that now, instead of in version 1, there was this method called get utility, I think is what it's called, and it returned a float that was added to the task object. Well, now I cannot guarantee that any child will have a task object. And so I need to get this utility value a little bit differently. And so I created this new non-dots component or task called utility variable evaluator. And let's just go ahead and take a look at this, because this actually provides a good example of sharing data between the dots task right here, which is the utility selector, and then the utility variable evaluator. Let me go ahead and first let's look at the utility selector. And so the utility selector, it has a very kind of similar convention as the wait task that we saw earlier, where this code right here just sets up the behavior tree and it's just used by Behavior Designer. And then from there, line 135 and below, this is what's used by dots. And so you can see that this code right here is definitely more complicated. As I'm looking at this now, it's been a few weeks since I last looked at this, but yeah, this code right here is a lot more complex than a simple wait task. So this is why we have unit tests. But beyond that, let's see. So here there is a component called utility value components, and this component, where is it? Right here. So this component here is the value that it reads in order to determine which child has the highest utility value. This component can be shared between non-dots and dots tasks without using any sort of shared variable system. And it does that by using this task, which there's nothing special about this task at all. It just allows me to go to this utility evaluator. And so there's the similar method called to what's in the original version of Behavior Designer called get utility. This is now called get utility value. And this method will be called by a separate system. And this system, you'll notice, has the same component, this utility value component. So the two tasks are linked by this one utility value component that is run within its own system. This system here, it does use dots, which I mean this right here, and then it implements iSystem. So this is a dots system, but it can also it is not going to, like, for example, use burst or anything like that, because in order to use the system, I needed to get the task. And these tasks can be any kind of generic type of task, mono or the classes, or non-dots and dots. And so this code right here will run well, but it's not going to run super fast like the dots tasks do. Under utility selector, you'll see that, yeah, like this system right here, it has burst compile, so we're going to be using burst for all this. So that will increase the speed of this pretty dramatically. So Santiago, did you follow that at all?
Well, that was very complicated. Yeah, sure. As someone that isn't as versed into the dot system, I think you definitely made it as simple as it was before, because I remember looking into dots a long time ago, and I remember it was much more complicated than this. So I'm glad you already made it simple. It's still complicated, but at least I can follow through, which was not quite the case before. But at least having this shared component in between those values is what's I'm interested in, essentially, because that means that we have values that we can modify and that we can use between both systems and communicate in a sense, even though it's not shared variables, but at least within the task, if we can code, then we can use those values to update stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And these, I'm trying to see which I want to show this actually running. So yeah, dots. This is not simple by any means, writing a dots task, but this is why we're going to have a lot of documentation. I'll definitely have videos specifically showing how to create a new dots task, since it's a lot more involved than just overriding on update, for example. But I think, let's see this example. If I go ahead and hit play, we should see this utility selector reevaluating the branches, and it's selecting different branches to run. So it chooses the middle. Eventually, it will, I think that's an old error. I don't know how long it takes. Oh, I'm getting the error, so it paused. Oh, that was it. Okay, I should have better examples than unit tests. Let me go to a more complicated unit test, I guess, and hope. Oh, that is not a good one because that doesn't use it. Okay, this one looks like we could have good luck. Let's not say error pause, and I need to fix that error. So we'll go this node, then this node, back to the first, back to this again. And it's a utility selector. So as soon as it returns success, that's when we will be able to kind of end the branch completely. I forgot what conditions. Yeah, so eventually this one will return success. So in this example, it switched between 4 different branches and kind of went back and forth. And so it waited 10 seconds. So that's kind of a good example of, we did have dots tasks, we had non-dots tasks, and they were all communicating with each other. And this was also an example of, I think it switched 4 or 5 times. So the utility selector in this case was working well.
Very nice.
Yeah, so got some feedback. Price very high, 145. Yeah, I mean, this is a premium pro product. our character controller sells at 249, and then we have 125. So there, I was kind of using A-Star Pathfinding Project. They increased their price to 140, and I think this is easily comparable. So yeah, I agreed it is high, but we'll also be updating it forever, just like version 1. And we need to make our revenue somehow from these assets. So hopefully you understand. If not, I'm sure sometime later in 2025 it'll be on sale. Sort of like the rest of every asset. Let's see. Trying to see what else I should show. Watch variables, burst support. With burst, I mean, we're doing one. We just have one behavior tree running right now. I really need to get an example showing of showing many different, or like hundreds of thousands of behavior trees. But let me go ahead and pause this, and we'll be able to run the profiler. Analysis profiler. And let's go to this, and I'll just hit play for a little bit longer. Okay, I'll select some random point. So right here is where the behavior tree is executing. And so if I drill into this, we can see, and oh, that is not where the behavior tree is updating. Where is the behavior tree updating? Not there. Oh, here's where the behavior tree is updated. Okay, so dots can organize it based on system groups. So we have many different system groups based off the execution logic. There is some prep that needs to be done first, and then there are inner systems, there are outer systems, and you can see that, like, here's this utility selector. It's in green, which means it's happy. It's using burst. So yeah, we do support burst. There's this one, this part, oh, I guess another tree is running because this runtime system, task object system, this is not green because it's not using burst. And the reason why it's not is because this is using the monotask, the old way of doing tasks. And so that cannot be bursted. So it makes sense. Then let's see, we also have some code that is Javafied. In this case, there's only one, but this cleanup system is what kind of cleans up and resets all the values back to what they need to be at the end of the frame. Let's see. Let's see, what else do I have? What else do I have? I think that pretty much that covers the highlight. There's a lot included in this. Then yeah, we are gonna, oh, I know what I need to support or show. If I go to, let me just go to this game object, this one that we were using earlier. And let me go ahead and delete that. And I guess the color changed on that too. It shouldn't have. We're in pre-release version. And let me go ahead and delete that. So in version 1, we had a set of reflection tasks, and those reflection tasks would use reflection to kind of access the current namespace and kind of get the current values and whatnot. With reflection, it's very slow. And so in version 2, or this pro version of Behavior Designer, we now have something called a delegate system. So if I look at my menu here and let's say actions, let's say I want to enable a game object. So I'll call set active. And we'll notice that we now have this set active here. And I didn't write a set active task for it at all. If I do a search set active, we won't get any results. The reason for that is because Behavior Designer now uses this delegate system where it uses a reflection on the very first frame, or the first initialization of the task. And then from there, it will create a delegate for that specific object. So you can call properties and methods very fast. Properties and methods you can get very fast. So there will be a lot less need for specific integrations, because if a lot of the integrations in version 1 just had a task where it just called one specific method, for example, of a particular asset. With this, if you want to just call that one method, then you can just use this, and you'll have a similar performance level. So this just really kind of prevents me from first having to create specific tasks that do specific things. If I only want to call one method or one object or get one object, then I only need to just call this, or I don't even need to create a task because it will automatically do it for me. But if there's a more complicated kind of task logic, like a lot of the Ultimate Character Controller tasks, those are more than just one line within on update. Those I definitely need to kind of recreate the task within Behavior Designer 2. But the task structure is very similar, as you saw. So I don't think it's going to take me too long to recreate some of these integrations.
This is actually really huge, because it means that essentially if I write any code in my code base, it becomes a new task for Behavior Designer, which is huge.
Yes.
What about the variables? How does that work when it's a delegate? Because, for example, here I see that you have a target and a value, for example.
Right. So those, like, if you wanted to use you could use the shared variable. So if I created a value, I get that's a bool. Let me type in some name. It will add bool. And so then I can set the value of that returned object. So this is set active. So this will set the value. This will call set active with a value of true, for example. So you can use the shared variables just like any other task. So was that it?
Yeah,
was that your question?
Because I think that's the most important part is it's not just creating a task and you have values that you have to put manually. It's very much a variable that you can use in those automatic tasks that are created. So it saves you so much time on writing all this template code.
Right.
You don't even have to do it. It's just all
Right.
automatic, which is huge.
Yes, completely. So like get active, I think it's called get active, or active self. Yeah, it's active self. So this is a property on a game object, and notice here I can store the results within a variable as well. So you just kind of use the shared variable system, like this task was what was written without using reflection or using this delegate system. So yeah, all that is fully integrated and works extremely well and extremely fast. So yeah, that I think is going to be extremely useful for first off for me, so I don't have to keep updating the code base for whatever the Unity decided to add or remove, but also for you in that whenever you switch Unity versions, whenever you add a new asset, it'll automatically pick up all those different changes. Okay, well, I was not thinking that it was going to take this long to cover everything, and I didn't really even show it executing very much. I think I'll get some samples done, and we'll kind of do another Game Dev Insider showing it actually executing and kind of go more in depth into each behavior tree.
Yeah, I'm sure people will be very interested in visual stuff where blocks are moving or with flocks or whatever, because that's where people actually see the result. Yeah.
Right. We're planning on bringing Atlas into the sample scene. So if you're familiar with Atlas from the character controller, he's going to make an appearance in Behavior Designer. We'll have to do that with inventory as well. One of the next major updates of inventory, we're going to have to bring Atlas in. But yeah, so let's see if we can through some of the questions. Pricing we discussed at the start. You can find the pre-release on our website right now. The pre-release version probably will not be on the asset store for at least a couple months as we kind of churn through it or kind of get everything done. You noticed in this live stream, I noticed a couple of they were minor issues, but I'll get them fixed. Then the upgrade price should be the difference in price of the two products and not more. My thought on that is that these are completely two separate independent products. In some sense, yes, they're both behavior tree implementation, but it's not just a pure upgrade in some sense. It's a completely new asset. But I'd be curious to hear more on what everybody's thought is. The difference also is only at $10 or $15, but Behavior Designer has, hundreds of thousands of users by this point. So that really does make a difference. Maybe not 100. I should get the numbers. It's a lot. Tens of thousands, hundreds. yeah, easily tens of thousands. I'm not quite sure if it can make to hundreds of thousands yet, but if it was in part of some free promotion, which I'm not sure if it was or not, but it was, I don't know. The asset store doesn't give you much metrics on this stuff. So yeah, the price difference, it would be $10 or $15 that we're talking about. So, I mean, we'll see what everyone thinks. I'm open to it. I'm pretty fixed on the 145 price for the full thing, just because I completely see the value in that price. But the upgrade price, it will be at least the difference, but maybe a little bit more since it is kind of a completely new asset. But let's talk about this on Discord, and we can see. I will not be setting any sort of upgrade price until it is released on the asset store. It just is too much to manage, for example. So yeah, there will not be an upgrade price if you purchase it on the opposite store, which thank you if you do purchase it on the opposite store. We get 97% of that amount instead of 70%. So yeah, thank you. And I will create a private forum for Behavior Designer as well to talk about it if you have purchased the opposite store version, the previous version, and yeah, you'll be able to kind of give a lot more feedback or kind of directly involved, or you'll be directly involved with the feedback. So get it. I'll be able to iterate on it a lot quicker than when it is released and there are a ton of users on the asset store. So, does anybody have any other questions before we close out this stream? Santiago, do you have any?
No, I think we've covered pretty much all of it. There's certain things we skimmed through it very fast, but I think it's a good introduction. We don't want to put too much information in people's faces right now, because I'm sure more people will have more questions as we go on. And I'm sure we can do more of these live streams to show the progress as we're doing the pre-release and making the updates, and also adding all the documentation, all the new scenes that we want to showcase, etc. So all good stuff.
Yeah, agreed completely. Well, it's so much easier now to show Behavior Designer now that it's in a mostly working state. And there were a few errors that I saw during the stream, so we'll get those fixed for the next version. And we'll keep iterating on it. And I am trying to get this out as soon as I can. It's my main job right now.
Nice, very nice.
But yeah, no, thank you everyone for watching this stream. And I'm not sure if we'll be able to do or if I'll have enough content for one in 2 weeks, which is what we had previously been doing. But I would like to at least do it once a month now that we're getting close. I should be able to manage that. But we will get back to doing our regular streams as soon as I get this pro version of Behavior Designer out. I just am so ready for this to be out.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've been working on it for so many years now, so yeah.
Yep. So all right, yeah. Let's keep the discussion going in Discord. It sounds like there's a decent amount of discussion on pricing. We'll specifically upgrade pricing, and we'll kind of talk about that. And yeah, let me know what you think. If you get the pre-release version, definitely let me know what you think, because I think it's really going to be huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Thank you, Santiago.
Bye-bye.